All good? Hair?
Hopefully my voice is going to make
Makeup?
it. Yeah.
Oh, you suffering?
Oh, well, I'm on day 6 of 24-hour tour for the yacht show. So I'll be battling through.
Battle through. Yeah, I gotta find a phone. Right, just look at the camera, everybody. Get shot. And we're back between two Yetis, and we're live here in the ISS headquarters at the Wright Maritime Group. And actually, let's give them a shout out for their wonderful Yeti mugs.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Cheers.
Yeti mugs, yes.
Well, actually, it's definitely not alcohol though. It's iced tea.
Yes,
Isn't it?
exactly. Yes.
Lemonade.
We are here. It is episode 6 of Behind the Wrap, and we are discussing fires on board. A very hot topic.
Nicely done.
Yes. But it appears to be happening more and more often. And whether or not it is, if it's perception, or if the fires are getting more intense, or so on, is what I want to discover. So we've pulled together our expert panel. I love this bit. Everyone needs to go, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
expert
of
panel.
course.
We are.
Humbly so.
So to my right, we have,
Chauncey Naylor. I'm with Resolve Marine Group.
and you are a firefighter, right?
I am. I'm a retired firefighter, both municipal and industrial. 2 different careers, and just started back with Resolve, heading up their Maritime Academy, which fire training is part of it.
It's part of it.
Yeah,
So you actually fought fires, and
absolutely. It's what I did all my life.
you're not a pyromaniac though, are you?
No, sir. No.
Are you the opposite of that?
If
I
I
guess
have
you
to
are.
have one, I want to be there.
And to your right, we have Brian.
Alonso with Resolve Marine Group as well. I'm more on the response side than the training.
Okay.
I'm the Open 90 manager, so all the compliancy for vessels calling the U.S. that need a salvage marine firefighter.
So you're actually on the job going out doing it
Yeah,
as
that's
it
correct.
happens today.
That's correct, yes.
When did you stop doing that?
I never stopped doing that, actually. I'm still eligible and still fully involved when it comes to some of the bigger work. Yeah,
Okay.
no reason to stop yet.
As long as you can still get on a vessel, why stop?
That's right. I can still keep up with the young guys.
So this side of the panel are the guys that do it, I guess.
Response.
Yeah, you're the response, the training, and the response. To this side, you guys are kind of like the prevention, aren't you?
Yes, prevention and service.
So to my left, we have
Glyn Day with Fire Ranger. And
there's a Singaporean English
Yeah,
US hybrid.
exactly,
Mongrel.
hybrid's a much better word than mutt, yeah. But yeah, so we kind of look at it from the other side. We're an inspection service and certification company through Florida State Fire Marshal, and also through the International Association of Classification Societies, through the vessels class approvals.
And this is MCA and Lloyd's and
ABS.
so on and so forth.
Yes, exactly. And then obviously your flag states as well.
It seems a strange question, but boats have fire extinguishers.
Correct, yes, they do.
Yeah, you never see them.
Well, it's one of those things where, depending on the style of vessel, they can be prominently displayed. They can be placed away with placards and labels, because
Who
kind of the
wants to
more
see it?
pleasure craft you get with a vessel, the more the owners don't want to see the equipment. The more industrial, the more it's out in the open.
Because these are the guys who do all the fire prevention at the boat shows.
We do, yeah.
With your fans.
Yes, we still have the contract with Informa, Global Events Division, so we take care of all the fire equipment at all 5 shows, Miami, Palm Beach, Suncoast show in Sarasota, St. Petersburg, and West Palm. And that's why I'm struggling with the voice today. I'm coming back off 5 days of talking fire prevention at the Miami Yacht Show, which was a great success again.
Awesome. And then to your left,
Russ Erikson with Interior Technology Services. We do fire protection on the interior fabrics of the yachts.
this is like a spray or something.
It is a spray. It's an MCA-approved product that we apply, conforms with, they actually have a new regulation, MCA 580, which they replaced January of this year, which makes it a little more stringent than it was before. They still have not really told us what the new requirements are, so we're applying it as per their last directive, which was, there's still, it's a work in progress, is basically, with them.
So is this, as a topic, I'm assuming it's like the rest of the industry, it's very slow to move.
Yeah, I think the industry as a whole is just like anything else. They're slow to change because they don't want to change, because it's comfortable where they're at currently.
And is this because there's no major issue, or there's...
No, I think it's just the conditioning. I mean, it's the same mindset is that, you know, what we have is good enough until...
Parameters change.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think, you know, the famous saying is there's no incident without, there's no change without an incident. You know,
Right.
so normally when something
Yeah.
I mean,
you know,
that's how,
happens, that's
like,
the
open
catalyst
happened.
for.
Yeah, it's
A major
driven
incident
by
took place.
incident. That's
Yeah.
right.
I think you were saying, as soon as somebody dies, it's going to get moved up very
A
quickly.
loss of life suddenly raises the profile. You know, loss of property, you know, loss of revenue is obviously hurts a lot of people, but loss of life is something that really sets the catalyst for change. It tends to move a little quicker then. In experiences that I've had, you know.
So historically, boats were made out of wood,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is a major fire risk. There must have been a major problem with the Armada and way back in the, well, all the way through
Yeah,
the whole
they-
history of time.
Yeah, they didn't last long once they started burning. That's right.
And so fiberglass burns, aluminium, aluminum, I guess it gets to a point,
Melts.
Yeah.
and steel as well.
It
Has to
moves.
get-
It moves.
Yeah, it
moves.
fluctuates, but.
At
Take
about
something-
1,200
yeah.
degrees Fahrenheit, steel starts to grow. It stretches and can tear things apart, structural wise, and things fail.
So what are the rules at the moment then in terms of what happens on a boat? I assume it starts with construction. Fire escapes, hatches, compliance with fabrics. So what do we know? Do we need to get a lawyer in to give us the...
Well,
We'd prefer that.
I don't know why it is, but the flame retardant fabric requirement, according to the MCA and all the red ensign flags that fall under that, is it's only for charter vessels over 24 meters. It's required if you don't have a fire suppression system on the boat. If you don't have a fire suppression system on the boat, it's required, but only for 24 meters and above. Why that is, I don't know.
Anything below 24, there's no requirement.
There's no requirements, no.
And this is
it's
fabrics
only-
only? Or-
Yeah, curtains, draperies, carpeting, beds, back headboards, you name some ceiling panels. It just depends on the vessel.
And on a plane, this isn't the case. On a plane,
It has to be.
It has to be.
It comes from, the fabrics come from the factory that have been tested.
Right.
The problem is on the yachts, they're all custom interiors by the decorators, and half the fabrics they use, they're looking for a look. They're not looking for the fabric like they have on a cruise ship, which is flame retardant already. So they have to have that look. That's where we come in and actually make it comply, because our product has been tested by the laboratories that fall under the MCA.
If we go back to just homes, and you're buying furniture from like City Furniture or something like that, we said no names.
I heard that.
I know.
Yes.
But there's a certain standard, isn't there, of where it can't burn, isn't it? I know V0 and H0
Well, I'm
burn ratings.
not sure about all furniture. I do know that baby furniture has that requirement, but I'm not sure that it falls into the regular furniture category. I'm sure there is, but it's out of our field of expertise. We just know what the MCA requires, and we just apply it according to the manufacturer.
So certain materials do have like type approval.
Certain materials do
Yeah,
have type
UL,
approval.
You will approve certain things. but-
Yes, and certain
but,
things
I'm not
can't,
sure.
certain things, when we do a report, we have to not just apply it, we have to produce documentation of what we did. There's pictures taken everywhere of the yacht, even though some of them don't like it. We have to do it for the documentation. We list every single item we did on the vessel. We list the material it's made out of. And then if we didn't do something, we put that in there. We did not do these draperies because they were too sheer and the product would just go right through it anyway. So we would list that. It's important because the insurance companies, what happens is if you have a claim, the reason we take the pictures is, let's say we went in there and you've got the picture of a black sofa in the main salon. The ship burns and you've got a green one. Well, the insurance company, because they have this documentation, the flag has that documentation, they can say, that wasn't covered. You guys, they have to, that's why they're so, not only do our certificate go to the vessel, it goes to the flag. They've got a copy of it. The manufacturer in London has a copy of the manufacturer of the flame retardant itself has a copy. We keep it for 5 years. We take a sample, we store it properly. So it is a detailed process.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's not fireproof, it's just
It's not
fire retardant, right?
it's a fire retardant. It's not
So-
proof. It just slows down the process. Again, it's to buy you time.
Yeah.
If the thing's going up, it's not the interior. It just gives you time.
So what starts fires? What's the main?
Excessive heat.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to get really deep.
Is it kitchen fires? Is it electrical? Is it?
Yeah, I think it's all the above. It's
Candles?
A lot of times it's housekeeping when it comes to galleys. It's housekeeping, basic housekeeping, keeping the grease cleaned up and things like that. And in engine rooms, sometimes it's just pure failure of mechanical pieces or lack of maintenance. Yeah, and sometimes it's caused by maybe an accident like a collision or a grounding. Things happen
things like
then
that.
as well. So
Or when they're doing hot work, repair.
yeah, absolutely, repair yard stuff.
Sometimes that happens.
I remember actually because when you're welding something on the hull, the inside has got it. You've got to have like a 2 or 3 meter clearance on the inside of anything.
And a fire watch.
And yeah.
Somebody,
Yeah.
somebody with a proper fire extinguisher and a proper fire blanket and somebody there 24/7.
Because there is nothing more terrifying than a fire. I don't think. I mean, capsizing, I guess, would be. But a fire is much more.
I mean, if you're putting water on a vessel, obviously stability becomes an issue. So you do have that issue of it going on its side.
Yeah, and we'll get to that one because it's shocking how it capsized. But when you explain it, it's common sense.
Absolutely.
Put water on,
It's
take it
not,
off.
it's not always used in the time of need, though.
Common
When
sense.
it's hitting the fan, people kind of
So-
step away from it.
I know electrical things have a lot of requirements from Lloyd's and from ABYC. Mind you, ABYC doesn't really touch super yachts, does it?
I don't know.
American Boating
Yachting Council.
Yachting Council.
It's kind of it's a code that's made up of industry peers, so it's a recommended code, and it works closely with all the other governing bodies, but it's more of a code that's used towards private pleasure craft, So I mean, you said earlier about when you're building vessels, obviously there's codes. I actually think, if you break it down, I think the vessels are built to the right codes. There's large yacht code, there's classification approvals, there's all the major codes and compliance things that have to be adhered to, and I think that happens. And then the fire equipment has to get put in, and that has to be to code, and that gets done. And if you look at them all on an individual basis, they're probably all
it's spot
perfectly
on,
spot on. But we live in a world where
It's
things
imperfect.
happen.
Yeah.
You add
so
the human factor.
That's what it is. It's the
And,
human factor. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to overload. You can put the correct rated, electrical line in with the wiring and everything, but somebody's going to overload it with something.
Or override it, turn it off.
Put bigger fuses in.
There you go.
Because this is the one thing I see a lot, is you got the electrical circuits and you add something in and then it trips and you're like, all right, I'll put a 20 amp.
Right.
Oh, I'll put a 30.
Yeah.
50.
Don't
That
look
that's
for the
working.
problem, just override it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, a lot of issues do arise from that, especially on smaller boats where it's much more of a DIY
Sure.
kind of a thing. So inherently, when we're building the boats then, there are some standards, but when it comes to fabrics and that, there's You think we've
There-
got a long way still to
There
go?
there are fabrics that can be used. Unfortunately, the decorators go there, and a lot of times, I don't say unfortunately, it's fortunate for us, keeps us in business. They want a certain look. A lot of these, it costs a lot of money to get these fabrics certified. And if you don't have a large volume of fabric being used, in general, in mass production, these are all custom yachts. Everybody wants it different. They're just going to use standard fabrics and have our product applied.
Okay, so from a design and construction point of view, we are doing a better job, but there's still some way to go.
There is. I think a lot of times, these the fires that we've heard about could be prevented by better training. I see that. I was on a particular vessel one time, and the captain was doing training for the crew, and it was great. I said, I've never seen this, and I'm on a lot of vessels. They were doing, I guess they do it every month. They do a drill in case there's a fire on board. And they had a designated person for the ditch bags. They had a designated person for the fire extinguishers. They had a designated person for the tender to get off the vessel in case,
Yep.
I mean, everybody had their job. And maybe it's just I'm not on board seeing this, but it was probably one of the most professional presentations I saw. And I think the captains need to do it more often. Maybe they're not required to, but I think it would be a good situation where the crews actually got trained like what I just described.
And is that something you're pushing for?
Absolutely, and that's part of the training they receive for the endorsement on their license is to renew that training and keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the captains that we deal with are doing exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
When you get on the professional vessels like the super yachts and that class of vessel, you're going to find that those guys they're hitting it hard. They're exercising their equipment. They're breathing down their bottles and changing out the air so they have fresh air to breathe when the time comes. So I think that most of the professional crews are getting the training and the repetitive practice. But it's not just firefighting, it's damage control as well. So there's a lot, when you ask about the causes, if you've got a fire and it creates some sort of fracture in a pipe, and they have seawater coming into the vessel, they have to have a plan to deal with that too, and that's something that we stress along with the firefighting. So it's not just strictly firefighting. There's other things to consider that can turn a boat over.
And this is what you're saying now, when it comes to the time it happens, common sense goes out the window.
In many cases, yeah. Now, I wouldn't say in all cases. You can't, obviously, there's a ton of seasoned captains and crew out there that react properly, and they're the ones that we don't hear about, right? Because they were successful.
Yes, they're the ones we don't hear about.
Right.
Okay.
So there's nobody out there really collecting success stories.
Right.
We're only reading about the tragic stories, the failures, which is good. It's good for the business to grow. It's good for the acknowledgement. It's good for the awareness, and it helps even facilities like ours to build the programs stronger and delve deeper into some of the issues. Because some of these issues are a one-time occurrence, but if it happened once,
Going to happen.
we have to practice and know that it can happen again.
Well, so were you involved with the one down in Miami recently?
Well, I'll let you speak
No
to that.
names, but
No names. Locations.
yes, we were involved in a recent one that happened in Miami where the fire was eventually put out and
How long
the
did it
vessel
take?
stability went over. To put out the fire?
Yeah.
They had the fire out
Two.
They had two
fires.
fires.
Too long.
But it
Oh,
was
too long, right.
yeah, it was one fire that just grew, but it basically was 30 some odd hours by the time it was completely out.
And I can.
Whoa,
I-
30
yeah,
hours?
yeah.
That it was declared completely out.
Let me explain something
Yes.
there too, and that's part of what we're trying to get across is that you can't fight a flammable liquid or an ordinary combustible like fiberglass that basically liquefies when it's on fire. You can't fight that with water only. It's not going to do the job. You can't possibly, you can't smother it with just water, right? So when when a fire department arrives or a crew arrives to fight a fire that involves a, engine room, or I don't even know the details of the particular,
basically,
the one
A
you're
big
talking
thing that
about.
happened was the stability came into effect, so they had to get off, so that's why
Of course,
it took
yeah.
longer to put it
But
out.
quite honestly, there's not
Right.
enough fuel on that vessel, not enough flammable material on that vessel, not enough combustible material on that vessel that they couldn't put out in a short amount of time with the proper chemicals, with the proper procedures, and a plan.
Because this is something you were saying, this makes common sense when you think about it. You put the water on, it's got to come off.
Right. And that's a fact. That's 101, firefighting 101 when it comes to shipboard, right? Is talk about dewatering, right as you're talking about putting water on or extinguishment or controlling a fire. Or, simply if you can stop the loss by closing it up, confining it, there's a lot of fires that we see that could have been just closed up, confined, and just tended to and let it burn out. Just keep it confined in one space and just surround it, the boundaries of it, with cooling and watch. But if you're going to go in and fight fire, you need to fight fire with the right tools. When Glyn puts an extinguisher on board, he's not just putting an extinguisher, he's putting a proper extinguisher, one with the proper firefighting agent, with the proper
size, the capacity for the hazard.
exactly
it's
the capacity.
protecting.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's all in the code again.
If you need 5 pounds of chemical and he puts a 2.5 pound extinguisher on there, then he's misrepresenting the firefighting agent. So he knows these guys are professionals. They put on the right thing. But if that 5 pounder or that 20 pounder that's required is big and ugly, they want to hide it. So it's out of sight, out of mind. So you fight the battle every day, I'm sure.
It's comes back to what you said earlier. You've got different styles of vessels. Certain vessels are subject to inspection and survey every year by their flag and a classification society. So you'll find those guys are dotting every I and crossing every T because they're getting an inspection. If you're an uninspected vessel and you don't have anybody coming on, next time you get a survey is when you're going to sell the vessel, then generally it suddenly becomes, in an ideal world, I'd like to think that everybody's getting their fire equipment serviced on the dot every year because I'd be working 24/7, but I'm not. So I know there's vessels out there that are,
Well, this is
Oh,
now
would you?
the terrifying statistic that you told us at the show.
yeah. Oh, we're just below embroidered towels and fancy soaps in
Yeah.
importance. Yeah.
Right.
You were saying that
Yeah,
the
that's
crews
quite.
know full well that the fire suppression systems are not up, are not ready.
Right.
But the priority is
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. There's someone that's being told you got to go from here to here and leave tomorrow, and we happen to be coming on that day and tell them that actually there's a problem here, and now that representative on board has to make the decision: do I annoy the owner and tell him we can't go and pick him up in Bimini, or do I get this fire system fixed? And then you in your world you're thinking, well, the obvious choice is get the fire system fixed, but sometimes that's not always the case. It gets
Because we've never
gets
had
pushed
one
back.
before, right? We never had a fire before.
Exactly.
That's,
you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And when you're talking
Exactly.
fire suppression system, are you talking just fire extinguisher or are there sprinkler systems?
No, fixed fire suppression. That's another thing you touched on. When you hear about fires, you've got fire suppression systems can protect the machinery spaces, and you've got and galleys, and then a vessel under 200 feet, say it's rounded off to 200 feet. They don't necessarily have a sprinkler system throughout the entire, occupational area of the vessel. So if a fire breaks out in a stateroom, there's no suppression in there. There's no sprinkler system. It's a 100-foot vessel. It just has an engine room system. So that's another. I hear a lot of misinformation where people say there was a fire and the fire system didn't go off. Well, it only has one fire suppression system in the engine room, and the fire was in the bridge. There is no fire. The only thing up there is portable fire extinguishers and the crew's knowledge and know-how and good training to put it out. So that's another thing where you hear a lot of misinformation when people hear one thing and they run with theories with no grounds for their theories.
So this is the thing of, we don't hear about the success stories, the things that went right, but we only hear about it when it goes utterly wrong.
Yeah. It's my expertise is fixed fire suppression, and I'll hear people say the fire system never went off automatically. They know nothing about the vessel. I know for a fact that system is a manual-only system. It will never go off automatically. So I'll hear people talking, and I just bite my tongue and say nothing.
So
Because
it's not like a house where we've got. Do we have sprinklers in here?
yeah, you're
Yeah,
right
they're up under those
They're underneath
flat
the,
covers.
under your covers there. For
Oh, really?
aesthetics.
Yeah, the water will knock it off and it'll be out. it'll be
All right,
fixed.
so we don't have stuff like that on a boat.
Only when you get up to a certain size
The newer
and built to a certain
and
standard,
larger.
Right.
and then you have fire suppression throughout the entire vessel.
But even on big cruise ships where they have sprinkler systems and high fog systems, out on those balconies, and there's been
Yeah,
many
there's been-
balcony fires,
Yeah.
they don't have a sprinkler system out there because it adds so much weight and so much money to the vessel.
Weight
Weight,
for the
physical
Piping
weight.
systems.
Yeah.
what, of the pipes or of the?
Yes, the weight of the pipes, the weight of the system. If it's full of water, it's carrying more weight on the vessel itself. And weight is a critical issue when you're talking about major big vessels. So,
How do you get a balcony fire?
Human error.
I
Again.
don't, yeah.
there.
Smoke. Okay.
One scenario, flick a cigarette out, it blows back in on the guy below you's balcony with a beach towel on the chair, and it starts from there.
So do you guys do cruise ships then? Because that sounds like
We
that's
cover
a
cruise ships,
very
yes.
Yeah. It's a whole different world,
yeah.
without question. The beauty about cruise ships is they've got tons of people that have training on board, and they're associated with a fire brigade on board. So it's closer to having a fire department on board. So they have a much better chance of
Being able to put it out,
containing
yep.
a fire. They have much better opportunity because they have fire zones, and unlike yachts where they can't just section off a whole section of a ship and just say, okay, if we can just sacrifice this one section, the rest of it will be okay. So cruise ships are a different animal with a much bigger advantage because of the fixed systems and because of the fire brigades on board. It's just a matter of training and sticking with the program when it comes to an emergency.
So one of the things, I forget who told me this, there was a boat going this season up to Alaska, and the insurance company insisted on retraining everybody.
That may have been us.
Yeah, it may have been us.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had a large vessel, a private yacht, going to Antarctic, to the Antarctic. And the insurance company insisted that they have specialized training in cold weather operations, whether it be firefighting or damage control. And I kind of laughed and said, so you're coming to South Florida for cold weather? But in my previous career, I had a lot of exposure to refineries and chemical plants up in cold weather. So we talked about things like water icing up and causing weight, because when you're spraying water in sub-zero temperatures, the water freezes really quick. And it'll freeze up and create weight on one side of the vessel or not, right? So once again, stability, only it's not free surface water that's allowed to move, it's building up on one side. So if you have a persistent fire and you're going in with water and it starts building up ice, you're adding weight. So it could cause issues. If they have a damage control issue, they've got water, freezing cold water rushing into the engine room. Now you're talking about you've got to get in a Gumby suit and operate in gloves, otherwise you lose the dexterity in your fingers. So that's more specialized training you have to think about. If you shut the nozzle off and the water stops flowing, the hose freezes up. Now that's a problem because the next time you go to open it, it's frozen shut. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're talking about extreme cold. So it's a whole different ballgame.
When I've spoken to a few people who aren't necessarily in the industry about fires on boats, they're just like, well, you jump off the side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've heard that a lot.
Yeah. How cold is that? How long is a Gumby suit? How long are you good for in that cold weather?
Yeah, exactly.
5 minutes
Depending on
if
the
you're flailing.
depending on the immersion suit.
I mean, quite honestly, it's less than a few hours, right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh, it is hours though.
yeah, it is hours.
Yeah.
However, it's hours to keep you alive to a rescue. If you're down in the Antarctic, you're in the bayou self. There's no one else around.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, that's what I call it. I mean, you're out there, and so you have to be self-sufficient. You have to be prepared. And the vessel group that we sent down there, they are prepared. They took it very seriously. And they got the right stuff. They've got their stuff together to the point where they know where it is, they know how to use it, and they're a team. They've gelled as a team. And we got to see it.
This must be really hard when you've got when you're constantly changing crew members,
Yeah.
because you're not a team anymore in that respect.
Especially if it's their first time on the vessel and they're not specifically oriented with the fire suppression systems,
Right.
where the fire extinguishers are, where the fire control. They might not have even looked at the fire control plan on the vessel.
That's right.
Now they don't know anything really about the boat for firefighting.
And we all know fires only start, well, not just fires, any incident only starts when it's the middle of the night, everybody's tired, they've just done a handover.
That's right.
It's never the perfect time, it's always the worst possible timing. That's just how it works.
And this is why you have a watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's regulations they
One of
have
the
again
reasons, yeah.
when they do handovers. There's procedures that are followed. If everybody follows procedures and follows the policies, it will limit it.
It's as simple as a smoke detector, I mean, same way at home. If you don't change the batteries, or it's annoying because the battery dies, so you took it out, I'll get it tomorrow, and you put it off, and it doesn't work when you need it, you don't get that early warning. And that's the beauty of vessels, unlike home, because you do have a watch and you do have a system to advise you that there's a problem, that you can go check out in its incipient stage and handle it with the stuff that Glyn provides. And that's the key, and that's the beauty of it, is that stuff is there. There's no fire very few fires that start so big that a fire extinguishing system, whether it be portable or fixed, can't handle it.
And you're putting foam, or are you putting CO2, or are you water?
All of the above.
Mishmash of everything: foam, CO2, dry chemical, and all kinds of specialty fire extinguishers, clean agent gas fire extinguishers. We try and tailor the extinguishers to the appropriate hazard, and at the same time still
You
abide
mean
by
like
the
in a
code.
kitchen, you do a certain thing opposed to what in a bedroom? The same.
Exactly, you've got a completely different hazard of fire in a
Right.
galley than you do in a stateroom.
When you're putting out a fire, do you ever does it ever occur to you that you're destroying millions of dollars worth of artwork and carpets? And
It's either lose the whole vessel or lose a painting or a carpet. I mean, do you want it to be maybe $100,000 fix or $100 million fix?
And quite
does
honestly,
that is that a consideration at all?
No, we're there to put out the fire and extinguish it. So whatever it takes by any means is what we're going to do.
and you have to understand, our response time is slow compared to being in the city of the fire department or being a crew on board a vessel. When you have to get to the point where you're calling a salvage company or a third-party contractor to come fight a fire, you're talking about that company has to load out on some sort of a vessel and get to where you are. So your vessel's on fire.
So, no names. The Miami one.
Yes.
You fought that fire from the land, or did you take a?
It was at the pier side. So, yeah.
And you've got a fire truck, or
We've got
tapping
portable
off?
fire not extinguishers, portable fire pumps that basically range from anywhere from 2,000 gallons per minute upwards of 6,000
And you're
gallons per
pumping
minute.
from the sea.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you don't need the fire engine. You just.
We don't need a fire engine.
Well,
no.
that fire,
But
that
we were-
particular fire,
yeah, that particular
whichever one
fire.
you may be talking
Sure,
about,
yeah.
We didn't
Was
actually have
addressed-
to put
yeah.
out the fire. The
that
fire
was
is actually
addressed by
put
the
out by
fire
the,
department.
yeah, Miami Beach Fire Department actually put it out.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Now are they?
Because they were there first.
Now are they trained to put out fires on boats?
Yeah, some departments are, some departments aren't. Miami Beach specifically does have a marine firefighting brigade, so they are. Now, there still was that stability issue where no one accounted for that during the firefighting. They were mostly worried about putting the fire out.
Now this particular incident that we're not sure
Yeah.
if it really happened or not. The boats next door, because that's the next issue, isn't it? You've got to
Yes,
train.
yes.
I heard somebody, was it Stacey, saying that you're training now for fires on the boat next door, what to do when that one catches on fire.
It's always your biggest concern is the exposure, okay? If you can, like I said, if you can stop the loss, whether it be within the vessel or that vessel alone, and stop it from spreading to boats nearby. So what do? Do you put water on the boats nearby to keep them cool, or you try to break them loose and get them out of the way? That's the preferred method, is to move them out of the way, but you can't always do that. It may be such a big boat you can't just shove it out. You may not be able to get close to it. So then the effect is, it's kind of funny because we talk out of both sides of our head when we're talking about fire. Fire is a science, right? Firefighting is a science. And the beauty of firefighting today is that we have all these specialty chemicals that water alone is just an ingredient. It's not really the means to the end. So there are very few things that we do with water, and one of them is exposure protection, exposure cooling. If we put water on an exposure, physically on it, not just a water curtain to hope that it blocks the radiant heat, but water specifically on that exposure. If I'm on fire and I put water on Brian, he's not going to catch on fire, most likely. Because I'm going to keep him cool, I'm going to keep him wet, right? And we're going to repel that heat. But if I just let him be, the radiant heat is going to eventually affect him if he's this close. So same way with boats, right? So if they're using the right chemicals.
So you don't need a spark. Radiant heat
Oh yeah,
can transfer.
there's an auto ignition temperature
reach
that
flash
everything
point, yeah.
can reach.
Is that what Flashpoint is?
Yeah, pretty
Ah,
much.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a good film.
Yeah. If you want to get a,
Depends where you're sitting.
if you get a if we get a magnifying glass now and we put it on your arm for about 10 minutes and eventually see how hot it's going to get.
And that's radiant heat.
It'll eventually ignite. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, radiation's a big deal, and you know, heat. We talk about the basics of firefighting. We talk about the methods of heat transfer, whether it be a direct flame impingement,
Right.
or radiant heat, or convection where the heat rises, heat going up. Well, where's it going? If it's going from the engine room up through the house, then things above it get affected because we see smoke, right? Well, smoke. What is smoke? What's your idea of smoke? Smoke is just simply unburned products of combustion that escaped consumption and are leaving. So it's hot fire gases that could still burn. And if they collect in a space in somewhere above the fire and they get hot enough, they'll flash, and you may have heard of flashover, they'll flash and create more fire because they're unburned products of combustion. It still can burn. So the deal is we want to get smoke ventilated out. We want to get the heat to travel. We may have to sacrifice a space, but we want to open and get the smoke and the heat out and then go in and address the fire.
So when you're
directly.
going into a fire, you're strategically breaking windows and stuff like that to control.
Strategically, yes. Yeah, it's not like the old days where the police arrive at the home and by the time the fire truck gets there, they say, hey, we did you a favor, we broke all the windows out. Well, you know, it's all ready for you. Well, now there's fire coming out of every window. Our job is to get into the space that's on fire and put it out in place and drive it off the boat or out of the boat somehow. So that's the key. But typically on a vessel, when you're going below deck, you're going in the same way the fire is venting out.
Yeah, generally.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a whole different world
Is this why
getting down.
you haven't got any hair?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Stress level.
That's right, yeah.
So actually, you're going into the fire as it's coming.
You're going in sometimes the same way the fire is going out, so you're basically meeting it at a
You're
point.
passing through that
Yeah.
thermal column of heat and gas.
Good Lord.
Yeah. It's really fun.
Now, when it comes to boats and shipyards, because I know, that's when the designers are coming in with all their bits and pieces, and that's when there's a lot of activity on the boat, and there's a lot of contractors, and I imagine it's very difficult to keep control of what's going on there. And that's when, there might have been another one recently here in the shipyard.
Yes, there was.
and-
And that's when, like we were saying, the watch standards that you have for the vessel need to be in place, especially if they're doing hot work. You see that a lot of times when hot work takes place, is the watch goes out, leaves for lunch, and comes back and there's a fire already broken out in the vessel.
And these can be small fires, can't
They
they?
can be small, yeah. They don't advance as big as engulfing the entire vessel, but it can be led to just a small area. before it gets
Probably the
out.
most important job in a shipyard is the fire watch, and he's the least paid. So
And is it
typically-
one per boat, or is it one guy?
It's one
for the yard?
per spot. I mean,
So
if they're welding on the outside of the hull, there's at least one person inside that space that could be affected. So it's just an environmental call. It may take more than one, but typically it's one-on-one, right? One guy can kind of watch a space and have the equipment to guard that space and keep it cool. Sometimes they're there just to spray water inside to keep it cool, depending on what level of work they're doing. But my point is that you've got all these things going on. You got all these high dollar fabrics being installed, and you've got one guy outside that's a professional welder, and he's doing his job, and the guy that's probably the least
$15
engaged,
an hour.
whatever case may be,
Yeah.
he's really being the most important position because he's the first line of defense. If he gets bored and he's doing his thing on his phone and he doesn't get good reception, so he walks up to get better reception or whatever the case may be, he kind of fouls his duty and it gets away from him because it doesn't take long.
No.
You know, once it happens, that means it's already reached temperature because you're conducting heat through. So it's not like there's a spark there. It's that heat conducting through a surface and it's heating
Yeah.
everything around it up to ignition temperature, so it bursts into flames. So it's not like it's a small fire growing. It is an instant fire. So it's out of his control already if he's not paid attention. If he's there cooling or he knocks on the hall or calls on the radio and says, hey, you got to stop for a minute. We're getting too hot in here, right? So he's got the ball.
Everything that Chauncey and Brian are talking about is fighting fully engulfed vessels, you know. And what we really need to do is we need to get the fire prevention aspect
Absolutely.
up so that all those incipient fires, it never gets to that stage. If all the equipment on board is, everybody's familiar with it, everybody understands how to use it. Got 50 fire extinguishers on a vessel, but they're all made of different manufacturers, different style, different type. That means they need individual training on each one, because this one you might need to stand back 20 feet, this one you might only need to stand back 6 feet. This has a different characteristic where you have to hit the wall and let it come towards you rather than hit the base of the fire. There's all different characteristics.
It's not just pull the pin and shoot.
I mean, the most basic fire extinguisher it is, but once you get into specialty fire extinguishers, there are different ways to fight them. And then, if you think about the industry standard, is that's only once a year. Once a year that equipment gets inspected by a certified fire company like ourselves. The crew are responsible to do it every month. Just a quick check, which they do and they document. But, you know, it's one of those things, again, that would happen on a vessel that's chartering, that has flag inspections and surveys, on a vessel that is owned by a homeowner or on an uninspected vessel. There's no way that that's really getting enforced. They're not doing monthly checks on their fire equipment.
Now, you told me a statistic at the show that terrified me,
Yeah.
and that's true, is it?
Go on, remind me again, what did I say?
Half of the boats in the marina aren't up to date.
Well, I have a database of 7,000 vessels that I've worked on their fire equipment. And I will contact those representatives, captains, owners, and say, and we're talking anything from 20 feet to 200 feet. And I will contact them and say, hey, according to our records, all the fire equipment's coming up for its annual inspection. And they will say, oh, we're not in town, we're gonna get it done somewhere else. And then a year later, they'll contact me and we'll go to the vessel and it'll still be my certification from 2 years ago. So I know since that time they weren't in town, they haven't got it done. So we can educate them, but I'm still a business. So I can't, no matter how hard I try and explain the benefit of getting it done, it's still deemed as a service I have to pay for. You know what I mean? So
It's
that
like buying insurance.
We run into the
It is
same
buying insurance.
issue with some of these owners. And the MCA does not require a private vessel to have flame protection on fire protection on their fabrics. Only the charter vessels over 24 meters. So I don't know statistically if more charter vessels go up in flames or private vessels. I mean, it'd be a good thing to know, but I would think that all insurance companies would want their vessels to have the same protection. It's just not consistent with the flags.
It seems like the insurance companies are kind of like the police
Well,
in this situation. Well, they should.
I had a
Should they
private vessel once say to me that the decorator calls me and says, we understand you, we want you to put fire protection on these fabrics. We're, 150-foot vessel. And I said, fine. I said, is it chartered? She goes, no. But I go, okay. So why are you doing this? She goes, well, I thought the flag required it. I says, well, I don't want to take money out of my pocket, but you don't have to have it on a private vessel. And it just doesn't make sense. I would think they would want consistency on these vessels like that. I have chartered vessels that are out of compliance and just say they don't see the value in doing it. And they go, well, as long as the flag's not contacting me, I'm not going to care. I go, this is what should be scary too. You know, you would think that on a charter vessel, you're hopping on there, the vessel would be compliant with everything. Well, I had a vessel contact us from Tahiti. Oh, we did this 4 years ago with you guys. I go, well, you're only a couple of years out of compliance. Well, we had it done in Fort Lauderdale and we're in Tahiti. I go, so I shoot him a price to do it, and he goes, nah, we're not going to do it. I go, you know, I'm not the police. I can't go to the Cayman Island flag and just say, hey, you got this guy operating over there for 2 years, not in compliance. What do you do?
Why is this?
That's a
It's
captain.
the owner saying,
No, that's a captain on an over 150-foot vessel, chartering, taking strangers on that vessel.
But at that point, he is negligent. If he's aware of it and he's now purposefully not doing it, that's...
What can I do? I'm not the police.
So let's move to a point which I know is going to be very hot topic, deliberate fires. So your boat, some boats catch on fire when they're up for sale. And
Did you wonder?
and it makes you start wondering. So should we just leave that one there?
I wouldn't even go there.
There was one I know of in Dubai many years ago, and it burnt to the waterline. It was just left, and it wasn't a well-made boat. And the excuse I heard was somebody left a blowtorch on in the engine room. It's plausible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can tell you of a case in my previous life that we were on board a vessel with an engine room fire, and the crew was still on board, which was unusual for us. They were usually gone by the time we reached the vessel, and this was at sea. And we found the captain was trying to scuttle the vessel while we were on it fighting fire. And we basically corralled him up and got him up on the main deck and had a guy watch him. Not one of our guys, because our guys were busy. And we caught him again, opening up the sea chest, trying to scuttle the vessel. And he admitted to us that that was his orders, was to scuttle that vessel. They wanted a total constructive loss, and they wanted it gone. And that was based on...
Replacement insurance.
Exactly. So,
Wonder that payout.
so, you know, we had the U.S. Coast Guard remove that gentleman before he succumbed to injury. Yeah, but that's how serious it is sometimes. I mean, he was under direction. And he was willing to sacrifice us to complete his mission.
So, without naming names, there's a very specific hierarchy of being put under pressure to do that.
In that case, it was certainly the case.
Yeah.
I mean, factors come involved, age of the ship,
Yeah.
some people look at it all aspects of like, oh, it's insured for this amount, yet.
In
I get
reality,
more.
the entire vessel was a burnout. It started in the engine, like a generator set, and it went through the engine room all the way up, and it was burning on the bridge by the time we got there. So the whole house was burned out, but the whole vessel was loaded with cargo. So
That's a nice payout there because the value of the cargo on top
exactly.
of it.
So your thing about documenting how the boat is when you certify it, I'm sure you do the same thing.
Yeah.
So when the boat's a total loss, I heard about boats recently that caught on fire and sank within 15 minutes, which is unbelievable. It's a 150-odd foot boat. How it sinks in that amount of time is incredible, but now it's gone. There's no way of actually seeing or inspecting it or anything like that. So in terms of just apportioning blame or reason, it all falls back to, I guess,
Yeah,
To a degree,
the fire investigators will come in and conduct their assessments, and there'll be multiple people there representing each person. So there'll be a fire investigator representing the vendors that are trying to
not get sued.
There'll
Yeah.
be fire investigators that are representing the owner, the insurance company will have their
So it's just
people.
this.
It'll
at
be
that point.
75 people all compiling dossiers and files and
On
lists.
why it wasn't their fault.
Exactly. And
So it can go underneath
And why
someone
they
else's
shouldn't have to pay
insurance.
claims.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the nature of that business. But the reasoning up front is crazy, you know, I mean, to intentionally, you know.
it's a dangerous avenue to go down. You imagine
Absolutely.
you're really putting yourself in it's a
Criminal.
No, it's
It's
a
a criminal
criminal. Yeah,
offense.
it's a
Yeah.
criminal act.
And you're exposing first responders and mariners, good Samaritans trying to help.
Yeah, I'm
There's-
sure.
It's a whole,
If there's something happens,
category would
there'd be a
rather not.
manslaughter clause involved in it and everything. If somebody was to get hurt, it would be scary even thinking about it.
Insurance companies look for any way not to pay a claim. That's why I gave you the example of the green sofa and the black sofa. When it had been replaced, they're going to say this wasn't protected.
So one thing that changes out
Changes out, needs to be
changes the boat.
in the eyes of the insurer,
Yeah.
insurance company, I mean.
so they made a claim on a black couch, but they had a green couch, so it didn't count, right?
Yeah, it didn't count. I mean, the rest of the boat, I don't know how that affects the entire claim,
Right.
but I just know
Just that item at least.
I have people asking all the time, why are you documenting all these, pictures and things like that? I go, and that's the reason.
And that's the
The
reason.
insurance company's looking for a way out. If there's a claim and you're not protected like you should be, according to your flag.
So in the last 5 minutes, what can we do, or what are you doing to make this better, more safer?
Awareness is one. you know,
Right. And is this from the passengers or from the crew perspective, or both?
Well, I think it bleeds out to the passengers, but we deal primarily with the crew because they hold the responsibility.
I can tell you, when I've been on a boat, it's never even been a consideration that there could be a fire on board.
Right, and that's the way it should be.
It could
You
capsize,
should
it
feel
could crash, it
comfortably,
can do
yeah.
everything else, but a fire is completely not on my radar.
Right.
It's going to be the first thing now.
Well,
How do I get out?
yeah. The beauty of it is that if they're compliant, even with fabrics, with fire protection, with all the specifications of that vessel, we should be out of the response business.
Okay.
If they're
Quite honestly,
if they're
Yeah.
we
trained
should
properly.
we should
and-
just be in the training business. And yet, you asked earlier, it seems that there's more fires. Well, I think that lends to social media. There's a lot. No big company certainly wants anybody to know they had a fire or a loss.
Well, there's a very large company in Germany that had a total loss, and I was trying to get them on the show, and they're like, no, we dealt with it,
Right.
we're moving on.
Right.
And it is. If it wasn't for social media, it may...
No one would have known.
No one would know.
Yeah.
Most of
The
them.
industries like that, whether it be the maritime industry, the oil industry, just about any industry, they want to protect their
Their image, pretty
reputation.
much, yeah.
They don't want to, all these viruses that are out there now, not just the coronavirus, but the other viruses that are prevalent on cruise ships.
Cruise ships, yeah.
It's hitting them, right in the pocketbook. So naturally, they want to do everything they can to be compliant, to be clean, to be successful, and to load those vessels back up. Because there's probably more cruise ships today than there were super yachts 20 years ago. And now there's that many more. Yeah, right. I mean, there's
Wow, yeah.
an incredible amount of cruise ships carrying an incredible amount of passengers, and there's that many more super yachts today, and that aren't getting the probably all the training they really need. They might be getting what they require, but the requirements aren't all they need, and that's what we're trying to fill that gap.
I will tell you this, since we've had a couple of high-profile incidents, in the area and sort of kind of close to home, being that we service through Florida State Fire Marshal, and so we service facilities and we also service vessels, I've seen a change. a lot of my customers are on the phone to me. I'm not calling them. They're on the phone to me and they are beefing up. I know that's the minimum code, but I want to go above code. Whereas before that was a non-sell
And why is that?
based on the fires that we've had and
So
high
actually, the
profile.
social media thing is
I think it is.
a positive thing because people are like,
Absolutely.
I think it is.
Absolutely.
It's
It keeps people in check.
And I will also tell you, if I listed 100 facilities and you recognize certain names and you said, oh, they're quite prestigious, and I would say, yep, that's one of the ones that's making a big effort to get better equipment, go above and beyond the code, and then you'll still have certain people that aren't going to make any change, you know. It's always going to come down to the money aspect, you know.
so the more we talk about fires on boats, the more
The awareness
gonna raise
level.
awareness level goes up and the more the responsibility. So this is a good thing.
It's inherent, yeah. I mean, they can't
Okay.
deny it.
Yeah, we've seen.
Once they hear it, they can't deny it.
Yeah, we've seen clients actually call us up to be their fire brigade when the hot work is going on now,
That's right.
since the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they're
it's-
taking that
It
extra
must be such a
precaution.
shame. You spend all this money and all this time building this beautiful thing and then it's gone in.
And like you say, it's carrying artifacts, it's carrying unreplaceable paintings
Artwork.
and things like that.
Family memories.
Yeah. I mean,
There was one boat in New Zealand that caught on fire midway through production, and it was heartbreaking. We knew the owners, we knew the people at the yard, and God, yeah, it's devastating.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for some people, these boats are,
it's a life's work.
it's a life's work, yeah.
So this is it's getting better. Is that what we're saying?
I believe so. I mean,
Improvements, yeah.
we are the exact company that you have to call to buy a piece of equipment or get it inspected and certified. And I know that the phone is ringing and the emails are coming in saying, our annual service, our inspection of our facility is not due until December, but we'd like you to come in now and could you just walk the facility again, give us any recommendations of where we could, you know, have more fire protection. And those type of things did not happen before. If you ever went in, that you would just look like you were trying to sell somebody something they didn't need.
Yeah.
Fire inspector, city fire inspector saying that's minimum code, they're saying that's fine, minimum code, I want to go higher. Those are all positive things.
In fact, I remember this now. We had fire extinguishers at our place in England, and they'd come and inspect them. I guess it was once a year.
Probably,
And they'd be
yeah.
like, again? You just did it!
Yeah, that's right. It seems like yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blimey.
And the sad truth is, and I know that this is a professional company we're speaking with today, but there's companies out there that hang paper. And they'll go in and they'll say, okay, yeah, we'll just put a tag on this one, a tag on this one, and they're not even picking them up and looking at them. They're not going through the procedures. And we see that in many.
We just found it the other day, right?
Exactly, in many cases. So just because it has a current tag doesn't mean it's been done. So you want to seek out the professional, you want to seek out the genuine professional, the one that's doing the work and is ethically responsible. You know, and it's a big deal. When you're dealing with your family's life, your client's life, your crew's life, it's very important.
You know, the knock-on effect of all this is positive, and then you've got, I'm sure insurance will be changing again because of, you know, the revenue loss.
Yeah, rates go up.
Exactly. So it's got positive and negative,
Yeah.
you know, effects all right across the butterfly effect.
Blimey. So are we ending this on a positive or a bit of a downer?
No, I would say it's
I think
positive.
it's very
Being
positive.
from the service aspect of it, from the service side,
Yeah.
I see it as a positive. Double-edged sword, because the phone starts ringing, because people are more conscientious, but that's because of something that maybe shouldn't have occurred in the first place. You know?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, tradition is moving aside, you know, where it used to be good enough. It worked for my grandpa, it worked for my dad. And that's being pushed aside. I always told firefighters that tradition's great when it comes to parades and funerals. But if you're standing still everywhere else when it comes to your training, to your equipment, to your chemicals,
Right.
if you're standing still, you're falling behind. And I think the industry is moving forward. They're becoming more aggressive, more progressive when it comes to fire safety, no question.
Cool.
yeah, the innovation that we see now with the suppression systems on board the vessels. it's coming on leaps and bounds, especially the new vessels that come across from Europe. So it is definitely a positive. I want to say we're ending on a positive, definitely.
And look where the Coast Guard's come with the salvage and firefighting regs.
Regulations now, I mean, basically that was upped in 2010 with the salvage marine firefighting regulations. They actually started requiring us to pre-stage equipment, firefighting specifically in there. So like a company like ours, we've got 23 depots throughout the U.S. just to meet time frame requirements for firefighting.
Every captain of port zone. So it's a big investment for us. It's a big headache to maintain, I'm sure.
It is, but we do it.
But we have to keep it ready because we want that current tag on our equipment just like his clients.
And if they need to pop in and see it, we're more than welcome because we know we're keeping up with our maintenance and training for personnel as well.
Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was a good delve into fire.
Yeah.
There we go.
And it's a positive thing that it's being talked about and scaring people. It's not a bad thing to scare people. We did one recently on cybersecurity, and that's terrifying.
That is
Yes,
terrifying.
that.
That
But
freaks
again-
me out every day. I'd
We all
rather
got
fight fire.
iPhones, so.
Yeah. But then talking about it and being aware of it moves you to action. So,
That's right.
yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you for not mentioning names.
Thank you.
I don't think we're getting
Thank
sued
you.
today. And we'll see you on the next one. And we haven't decided on a topic yet, have we, mate? No, we will. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You might be calling it. Guys.